We want to hear more about Kirk Zeller and where Kirk Zeller started.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I actually started right here in this town, in Ravenna, Nebraska. Well, more specifically on a farm about 7 miles south of Ravenna, Nebraska. But we're sitting here today in the Carnegie Library, the same library that was here during my childhood where people would come to study. So I grew up on a farm here in Nebraska, and and a big part of my story and what motivated me to do the things that I've done has a lot to do with where the upbringing and where I grew up and the situation I grew up in. In the 1980s, that was the peak of farm bankruptcies in America. That's when Farm Aid and everything was kicking off. And in fact, in 1987, it was right here. Farm Aid is right here in Nebraska. And it affected many people that I grew up with, their grandparents, their parents, even my own grandfather, they had to declare bankruptcy during this very, very difficult time. And so for me, that was kind of a catalyst because my grandfather kind of let me know that, it's probably not a good idea to follow in my footsteps and become a farmer. It's like, go off and, pursue another career. And, when your father gets ready to retire, you can always come back. The farm really can't support you. You got to kind of, find your own way and not rely on, the legacy. And I'm a product of immigrants to this area. I'm half Sandhiller, half Central Nebraskan. My ancestors settled right here in this area, and they've been farming here in Buffalo County since they came to the United States from Germany. So it seemed like I was predestined to be a Nebraska farmer, and maybe that's how I'll end my life. But in between, I had to find another path. And so right at the same time, that the news was very much dominated every day by the farm crisis in America, as I was in the tractors and in the trucks and working, the other topic that was on the news was the trade imbalance with Japan, the trade friction. I mean, it was the peak of that at that very same time. And a lot of the people on this talk radio and stuff had the attitude of it's impossible to sell American products in Japan. They're just going to overtake our economy and there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm like, wait a second, there can't be nothing we can do about it. So that really got my interest, and I decided kind of right around that same time, probably when I was like 13 or so, that I was going to go to Japan. I was going to figure out how we can sell American products in Japan. I wasn't going to accept this attitude. It's kind of a make-a-move attitude, I think, I was going to go, instead of just like listening to people and accept this, I was going to go over there, I was going to make a move, and I was going to figure out how to sell American products in Japan, and that's what I did. So I went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I had 2 exchange programs to Japan. I took advantage of both of them and spent most of my undergrad studying in Japan. And before I even graduated, I was working at a Japanese medical device company in Japan before my graduation date.
Wow. So when you were you get out of high school, you enroll into UNL, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Did you immediately go to Japan? Or?
No, I was at UNL for a whole year.
Okay.
So I applied as soon as I got to university, and then I went over for the fall semester of my sophomore year.
Wow.
It was my first time, and then I was back for 1 semester, and then back for 2 more years. So in Japan.
And then, but that even led you studied outside of Japan, even, and also London. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So I've studied so I have degrees from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. From Imperial College London, and where I studied biopharma and health technology entrepreneurship. Worked on spinning out medical device companies, which is kind of one of my focuses. And then I also studied at the International School of Management, which is based in Paris, but we took classes in Paris, New York, and Tokyo, and then later in Sao Paulo, Shanghai, Delhi, and in the course of some of my other studies, I was in South Africa and Canada. So, I had the opportunity, throughout my academic career and professional career to study in a lot of different countries.
Nice. The other thing that I when you were in your first little introduction there, you mentioned this library and you called it the Carnegie Library, not like Carnegie Hall, right?
No, it's the Carnegie Foundation.
Same guy?
Apparently so.
Wow, man, yeah. Carnegie.
Yeah, that built these libraries across America. You'll find them in a lot of small towns. Some of them, unfortunately, have been destroyed, but in recent years, there's been a lot of efforts to preserve them. This one, when it was decommissioned a couple of years ago, I was able to rent it from the city, and it's become the offices for the Silicon Prairie Center. And before it was kind of a place of knowledge and learning and advancement. And we like to think it's that way now as we work on these kinds of things and work to develop medical devices that can help people and come up with new ideas for innovation. So I think we're kind of taking a new take on kind of the learning and knowledge aspect of what used to be a Carnegie library.
Yeah, it's just interesting to all these stories come together, and he was the steel guy that was one of the not founding fathers of America, but in the terms of
economically,
entrepreneurship and building America, he was one of the dudes. So it's kind of interesting to see.
It's a lasting impact. I mean,
yeah, and now that one of the buildings that he helped fund is now a new generation of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
I love that part of the story.
Yeah, that's wild. Hey, Riley here. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Make a Move podcast. For more content, check us out on all major social media platforms and makeamovepodcast.com. Until next time, get off your butt and make a move.